Hello, everyone, and welcome to CCYA Interviews. I'm Vasu Bharadwaj, and I'm your host for today's episode. Today, I'm happy to have with me the former Minister of Defense, Foreign Affairs, and Justice and Attorney General, and the currently a strategic advisor at Deloitte Canada, the Honorable Peter MacKay. Peter, how are you?
I am well, Bashu. How are you doing? What a pleasure to be with you.
Likewise, I'm doing fine. It's great to have you on the show, and we want to thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking the time out.
Well, it's my pleasure. I last saw you in Quebec City at our very exciting national convention where there was a lot of energy and magic in the room. And I think, while there's going to be daily developments and ups and downs over the next while until we get into a federal election, the party is certainly feeling quite motivated.
For sure. And, talking about the convention, we have seen Pierre has rallied up a new group of conservatives, lots of people who are getting involved in the movement for the first ever time. So I want to ask you, how did you first get involved in politics?
Yeah, that's a grew question. Well, I around politics to a large degree. Both of my parents were active. My father, was a member of parliament and a member of the Mulroney cabinet and the Joe Clark cabinet. My mother was more what I would describe as an activist, and she was very involved in community and women's health issues. She was Irish by descent and sort of an internationalist. And so they were both influential, I suppose, throughout my life and the gravitational pull towards politics. But it was really a chance encounter that I had with Jean Charest when I was just out of law school. And, he was a young, dynamic guy, was in the process of rebuilding the Progressive Conservative Party at that time. And so he took an interest in me, reached out to me several times, encouraging me to run. And I made the decision while I was still working as a Crown prosecutor. And, to my surprise, I got elected in 1997 and went on from there to serve 6 terms and, got elected here in Nova Scotia in Central Nova and served in the cabinet of Stephen Harper for almost 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. And it's great to hear that it's always that first step that you have to take, and then you never let go of politics. I mean, I first took my step by just doing a simple canvas, and since then, you never let go of politics. It keeps on coming back no matter what. And
no, I think that's exactly right. And it matters, and people's engagement matters. Democracy is predicated on participation. And so getting involved in a campaign, joining a party, being engaged is an absolutely essential ingredient for our country.
For sure, for sure. And now we want to hop into our question and answer segment. And these questions are asked by members of our team. So the first one talks about foreign policy. So foreign policy dynamics have been ever evolving from the last couple of years. And one of them has been BRICs. So how do you think Canada should deal with BRICs? And do you think that they are even a force to be dealt with?
Well, China and Russia are the most ominous members of the BRIC. And, it was obviously seen as a bit of a counterweight to what Western countries have been doing for some time now in terms of trade, in terms of our security and sharing of information. And yes, of course, we have to be aware and cognizant of their activities. We have bilateral relations with those member countries, but I don't think that I know that we don't share the values that those countries have in many ways. And certainly there is a degree, I would suggest, and probably a growing degree of animosity that they share against the Western world and Canada as well. So, how do we deal with it? We deal with them diplomatically. We, of course, have organizations that we are important members and founding members of, including NATO and including our involvement with the Five Eyes. We've seen new organizations form that we were not invited to join, like AUKUS, which is of real concern, but I won't go down that road. And, of course, our ability to work with our allies in close concert around trade issues. The WTO, the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement with the European Union, is something that we haven't fully realized in terms of our capacity. But those organizations, I think we need to lean into a little more, and recognizing that we are in competition to a large degree with those BRIC members.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's definitely, I personally believe it's definitely a force to be dealt with. And, we definitely need a comprehensible leader to put us on the world stage and to diplomatically deal with it. Unlike, how we've seen Trudeau deal with some other situations recently. But moving on,
I think that's very true, Vasu. It's a great point that we have, I think, being in decline for the last 8 years in terms of our standing amongst our global partners. Even the tragic circumstances, this horrific attack on Israel is another example where Canada appeared to be quite slow to react. And it's another signal that our allies, and to a large degree our adversaries, are looking at us a little differently. And that's of concern. It's troubling and signals, in my view, a need for Canada to have a more robust foreign policy.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to now talk about digital intelligence, which has been a growing era from the past couple of years. So Canada has experienced many benefits from digital intelligence, but however, in foreign affairs, it has created many new threats of things like cyber warfare for countries. So what role do you think cyber warfare plays for Canada in the coming years?
Well, it is a growing concern, and it's an area where, frankly, we need to invest. They need more resources at the Canadian Security Communication Establishment is an important part of our digital defense against cyber attacks. Of course, that isn't just waged against government; it's the private sector as well. Not surprisingly, the decline of some of our industries has been commensurate with the rise of those who have been able to steal intellectual property. And Nortel is a perfect example of a Canadian country that was cratered by outside entities stealing that intellectual property. The rise of Huawei corresponded almost identically with the decline of Nortel. And so there's a lot at stake. That's just one example. We need to make those investments. We need to continue to attract and have homegrown talent, people who are able to operate in that world the same way as we have physical soldiers who are defending our country. We need cyber warriors who are able to protect us through their skills online, their ability to intercept and disrupt and prevent the type of cyber attacks that occur and are occurring, with an alarming frequency in our country as they are in other Western countries.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And what do you think that in specific to what Trudeau and his cabinet has been doing, do you think that he has made any, specific moves that has made us more vulnerable to cyber warfare?
Well, there is evidence of that, Vasu, as you know. The foreign interference file has become a very hot topic. We are supposedly going to have an extensive examination and inquiry of this led by a judge. And I think that may lay bare some of that vulnerability that hopefully will result in further investments and further fortifying of our cyber defenses. What happened in terms of India has also, of course, put us on a precarious path with a fellow Commonwealth country, a country that we were hoping to pivot away from China and pick up some of that business and trade with India. I'm afraid that is now in jeopardy. So all of this is an example of the real world consequences of not only making diplomatic mistakes, but not holding up our end of the bargain. Five Eyes, of course, I mentioned earlier, an important organization that shares intelligence. It works collaboratively to try to thwart the threat of adversaries like Iran, like China, obviously Russia, and even lone wolf actors. And so we need to up our game. We have to be contributors, not just net users of signals and human intelligence that's picked up by our cyber partnership.
For sure. And talk a little bit about contributing in our next question. So I'm sure, as you're aware, there was a recent $1 billion cut to our defense budget. So What do you believe the impact of that will be, and how do you impact our relationship with NATO in the coming years?
Well, it's staggering. We've just 6, 7 weeks ago been at a NATO conference in Vilnius where we committed to uphold the 2% of NATO defense GDP spending. And we're a long way from that. We're actually headed in the other direction, especially when we make $1 billion cut to the defense budget. $1 billion annually out of the defense spending is going to have a very negative impact on our capabilities, our recruitment and retention, the investments that we need to make in the equipment and armament, some of which we have rightly provided to Ukraine, but we will now face delays and possibly lengthy delays in terms of replacing that equipment, missiles, long-range guns, tanks, armor. This is coupled with, the delayed commitment by this government to purchase F-35s, a modern fifth-generation fighter aircraft. All of this is having a very demoralizing impact, which is hard to put a monetary figure on, but it speaks to the priority, and it speaks to the fact that we are again out of step with other NATO countries who are increasing their spending because of developments, the attack, the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia, what's happening in the South China Sea, how China is menacing Taiwan. And now, of course, just in recent days, this horrific attack on Israel by a terrorist group, Hamas. So it doesn't square with what our closest and trusted allies are doing. And I think it's leaving a lot of Canadians puzzled as to why the government would prioritize a defense cut at a time when we actually should be upping and improving their budget.
For sure, for sure. So we've talked a lot about foreign policy and defense and things like that, but I want to take a step back into history. And that was when both the Canadian Alliance and the Progressive Conservatives existed. So I want to ask you, what were the factors that led your decision to merge with the Canadian Alliance, despite you having previously made a commitment during your 2003 leadership race that you would not pursue a merger?
Well, basically reality and the fact that we were facing Paul Martin in an upcoming election that was looking like it would be devastating. We had lost, Progressive Conservatives and Alliance, who were really conservatives, had lost successive elections and really had no expectation that we could win as we continued to split the vote across the country in every single riding. It's the definition of insanity to do things over and over again and expect a different result. And so, in spite of having won the leadership with the proviso that we would talk but not merge, and that was the position, by the way, of all the candidates, and it was also the position of members of the alliance, but we were sort of facing, mutual assured destruction. And so we undertook a series of discussions that led to further realization that we were really of the same DNA and that we would be a much more competitive alternative. And so the bottom line is that we needed a competitive democracy. There was no other party in Canada who was going to be able to replace a tired, arrogant, out of touch, and in fact, corrupt liberal establishment. They had just come through the Gomery inquiry that exposed a use and theft of taxpayers' money to buy advertising in Quebec. So that was also a factor in the wind. But, as leader of that party, I undertook what was obviously something conservatives hold very dear, and that was a consultation. We had a national referendum of party members. And you know what happened, Vash?
What happened?
90+% of the conservative membership voted to proceed with a merger, and similar, perhaps even slightly higher numbers of the alliance. So while historians might somehow try to pin this on me as a reversal or somehow a political misstep, this was absolutely in keeping with what conservatives on both sides of the divide wanted. And we respected those views and proceeded with a merger. And of course, what happened from there. We went on to form a government within 2 years, and we're in government for almost 10. So that's kind of a ringing endorsement and really answers the mail, as I hope I have, on that question.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And just to kind of end off the interview, we'll be moving on to our advice for the next generation segment, where we'll be talking about youth involvement in politics and more. So, what should young, conservatives, and politically involved students do to get more politically active? And what is one piece of advice you'd like to give them?
Well, in essence, it's be informed and be involved, whether that's at a campus club or a local club. Go out and listen to those who are currently either representatives or on EDAs, as they're referred to, electoral district associations. Find out what feels right. Try it on. Engage in those discussions and debates. As the saying goes, if you don't go to the dance, don't complain about the music. Go to the dance, be the music, play the music, change the music. It's really that simple. And that, again, as I said at the outset, is the essence of democracy, is participation. So we need young people to get involved, to be part of the political process, to be active participants in democracy.
For sure. So I want to thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you being here with us, and we wish you well in the future.
Thank you so much, Basher. Real pleasure to be with you, and thank you for what you're doing. I think this is extremely important to reach young people and to talk about these issues, and also to do it in a way that's engaging and interesting.
For sure. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.